Confetti Covered Quicksand, Chapter 11. I just need to sell this heroin. Charlie was still acting as my personal manager/publicist, and I started to notice her becoming very aggressive toward me as far as who I was seen with. She didn't like my Hollywood friends, and she didn't like my coworker Allison. She thought they were all bad for my image in one way or another. I wanted to tell her to back off, but I was sure my social life would suffer if I crossed her. I saw the way she very suddenly cut off friends, telling all their secrets to the world and laughing at their insecurities and vulnerabilities. She was pretty vicious once she decided she didn't like someone. Even close friends or family members were not immune, and I knew if I were to split away from her that I would have to be very careful about it. The LA club scene was completely different from what I was accustomed to. But I realized the formula was the same. It was universal. Don't sleep with anyone. Don't let anyone be able to point you out and say they've slept with you. Big bang boom, that's it. After word got out that I turned down Max and he was chasing me, other guys started to chase me, seeing if maybe they could be the one to score. My value rose because of the demand. Basic economics were in play. Charlie noticed that I was the one walking in front of her while she trailed behind me, and let me tell you, she did not like playing sidekick. That was not her gig. Our shift in roles caused her to become mean-spirited toward me. I tried to be more low profile so she could take her place in the spotlight again, but she was being pushed further and further into the background because she started to seem bitchy and bitter and less cute and fun. I turned 22 that fall. Missy's bosses were opening a regular legit nightclub and asked her if she knew anyone who would cocktail waitress. She recommended me, Charlie, who didn't even need to work a second job, let alone a first job, because her dad was a famous producer. I think she was working out of boredom. And a friend of Charlie's named Carrie Ann. We were excited to pick up some extra money for clothes and shoes, and we quickly spread the word about the new club, which was located on Ventura Boulevard. It was one of only a few places to go in the valley at that time. Everything else was over the hill in Hollywood or Beverly Hills. The opening of the club was a success, probably due to Charlie for the most part. She lent her name to it and brought in many people who either knew her or knew of her and considered her credible. We had to wear cheesy, cliched outfits, a tight white low-cut shirt, a short black skirt, a bow tie around the neck, and really high shoes. I thought it would be easy not having to remember any food orders, but it was much more difficult than I realized. 1, I had to weave through crowds in high heels carrying a tray of drinks, and that was scary. 2, it was hard to find the people who ordered said drinks. They were moving all over the place, and I rarely remembered what anyone looked like. I could never hear anyone over the loud music, and I could never keep my money straight. I was horrible at counting back change, and it was also challenging because I knew some of the people personally, and I felt embarrassed working while they were partying. It was hard being on the other side. So many people wanted to party with Charlie and me. We sometimes got caught up with the whole thing, did shots with people, and then really screwed up at counting back change. Guys would get drunk and try to grope me while my hands were full of drinks. I had to put my tray down one time, take all the drinks off, and beat some guy with it. I had this great Austrian bouncer who would throw people out when I gave him the nod. He was hot. There were also instances where I played bimbo, deliberately counting back wrong change to try to steal money from drunk people. I did not have a conscience whatsoever, but there were other times where people would get so drunk they would see their bill and refuse to believe they ordered all of those drinks. We had to sit there while the cleaning crew was cleaning up the place after it closed, lights on, and try to get these slurring drunks to cough up the money. I was like, my dog's hurt. Can I get the fuck out of here already? Okay, so Charlie and I were there working and partying, but kind of staying separated in our own sections because of the tension between us. We promoted the club on our days off, and the bosses loved us for it. They gave us tons of money and free booze. My rent was paid, and I had money for clothes. I was stoked, but I was nervous in the back of my head because I didn't have a car, and I was feeling the clock ticking on Charlie. I knew she was going to soon turn on me, which would leave me with no ride to work. Missy worked at the club on different nights. Carmela and the other girls danced on platforms. I did some dancing on the platforms myself and felt really stupid and robotic. Scott Baio came in one of those nights, and Missy started singing the theme song to Charles in Charge to him, which he did not find very funny in the least, but I laughed so hard it felt like I did a major ab workout. Charlie's friend Carrie Ann seemed to be doing just fine at the club, but that was because she was a major drug dealer. She did not need a job, but she wanted to get more customers. She was dealing, among other drugs, a new drug called GHB, which she also drank from a flask from time to time. Sometimes she would pull a huge crack rock out of her bra and order me to step on it and break it with my heel. She'd say, "Hey, break this rock, homie." I was like, is this really happening? I found it to be absolutely appalling and amusing at the same time. Charlie and I laughed at how crazy she was. Carrie Ann had a scale and all the necessary paraphernalia to package and sell drugs in her room at her mom's house. It was all perfectly hidden each time it was done being used. She had this very girly, sweet bedroom where she would measure everything. It was painted in pinks and pale blues and full of pictures of angels and fairies and pretty things. The owners of the club also used some of us cocktail waitresses to promote their other clubs on the weekends. Some nights just Carrie Ann and I had to go. I didn't want to be around a drug dealer, and I especially didn't want to be with her when she did a deal. But too bad for me, she almost always did one when I was with her. I was always praying we didn't get pulled over. She liked to listen to rap, like Too Short or Eazy-E, and the bass would be on so loud in her truck that the rear view mirror would shake. If another car was bumping their bass really loud, like at a stoplight, she would roll down the window and yell, "Let's have a bump off, homie!" and then turn hers up even louder. Then she would grab my purse, open my compact, stuff some drugs inside, and snap it shut, all while checking her pager. Sometimes she would be talking to me, and she would pull out the horn on her steering wheel, fingering around for a baggie of drugs inside. One day, she told me to wait in her truck. She'd be right back. I looked out and saw her climbing into her ex-boyfriend's house through a window. She came out quickly thereafter without so much as a change of expression. She was holding a leather organizer full of folded papers. She got back in the truck and slammed the door, tossing it to me. "Hey, hold this." She said it was his phone book and she needed to look up the number of his new girlfriend. A few weeks later, rumor hit the street that Carrie Ann had tied up her ex and his girlfriend to chairs and took off all their clothes. I couldn't imagine how she could have manhandled her ex. Then it crossed my mind that she had most likely used a weapon. I didn't answer my phone for a while. Meanwhile, back at my apartment, drunken drama was going down. Anthony was dating a cute guy who we were all shocked actually liked him. He never got hot guys, or any guys, for longer than a night. But this guy was polite, young, handsome, smelled good, and drove a Porsche. I was woken up one night by loud crashing and glass shattering. I jumped out of bed and I was nervous to see what was going on. I was sure it was someone breaking in to finally murder me, which I was always sure was about to happen in that apartment. I was shaking. When I realized it was just Anthony, I started yelling at him. I kept asking him what the fuck was he doing, and he kept saying, "Go back in your room." I felt really scared. Was he going crazy? It seemed like his voice was normal, but he couldn't control his actions. I listened as he shattered potted plants down the stairwell, pushed over his cologne collection on his dresser, and knocked over every single one of his belongings. The next day, I demanded to know what was going on. I was furious. He didn't want to talk about it. We got in a big old fight. His behavior scared me really badly. I felt like I was in danger. I didn't feel safe. I wanted him out. I had no loyalty and didn't even consider all Anthony had done for me over the years. He took me with him when we all got kicked out of the Topanga house, and he put a down payment on the apartment for us. He had supported my partying for a few years, not to mention food and housewares and furniture. I was ungrateful and remembered nothing from the past. I just knew that I was mad right then. I was mad that he was trashing the place and I wanted him gone. It turned out that Anthony's hot boyfriend made out with another one of Anthony's other close friends, either Jack or his cousin or somebody else in their circle, I forgot who. but it hurt Anthony so much he just wanted to throw a fit. I didn't give a fuck, and I had him taken off the lease, and I took over the place. Anthony moved to Vegas, and I only saw him once or twice more in my life. I started dating Max's sneaky-looking friend Andrew. He was popular and hot, well, to me at least. Allison saw him around town and was convinced he looked like the devil. Anyway, he came at me in a gentlemanly manner and asked me out on a date, so I said yes. He picked me up at a Lexus and took me to Morton's for steak. I was such an idiot, I thought a Lexus was the coolest thing ever. I was trying so hard to act all rich. All I wanted to do was be seen in these nice cars so I could feel good about myself. I was quite shallow, but it came from me being so insecure about my social class. I was really very pathetic. Anyway, I felt this guy was a good match for me. I thought, okay, he has the goods and people know his name. The calculated side of me was pleased that he looked good on paper, but there was something more that I tried not to think about. I got butterflies when he looked in my eyes, right in my gut. Damn, I thought, this guy might get me good. I was nervous because I hadn't been on very many actual dates, like I mentioned before. I loaded myself up on wine at Morton's and managed to throw out some witty comments, but I was still terrified and hoped it wouldn't be obvious. I just wanted to be able to be with a guy and not be so scared. I really started to like Andrew. He was quiet, tall, and didn't brag about money whatsoever, and I respected him a lot more than his friend. He tried to sleep with me on the first few dates, and of course I said no. He stopped calling after a bit, and then I started to see him out with other girls. It upset me. One time I walked up to him and his date, grabbed his drink, drank the whole thing in one gulp, and slammed it back down on the table. Then I took his date's drink, gulped it down, and slammed it on the table as well. Classy, huh? I was pissed. It seemed a lose-lose situation I just didn't understand. Sleeping with guys made them not call you again and not want to date you as a serious girlfriend. Okay, got that down. But when you say no to sex, you end up losing them anyway? Well, fuck that. I was getting sick of the whole thing. Journal entry December 7th, 1995. My new roommate, Simon, he used to live downstairs with his brother, but now he lives in Anthony's old room, was banging on the door with a 7-foot Christmas tree. I didn't feel too much in the Christmas spirit. I heard him banging from my room, and I figured he lost his key, but I didn't feel like getting up to answer the door. I had some music on, blaring from the bathroom, so that was my giveaway that I was indeed home. I was really stoned, a tad paranoid, and questioning every friendship I ever had, and I didn't feel like being nice, is what I'm saying. I finally opened the door, looked at the tree, rubbed my eyes, and walked away. When I came out of my room later, he was gone. The tree was up on a stand in the corner, and the gifts I bought for my friends were placed carefully around it. It smelled really good, so I did get a little spark of Christmas spirit, but I still felt lonely and sad. The next few days were the same. I didn't leave the house except for to go to clubs at night. Actually, I did go to the store once to get sushi and some Gatorade to mix with my vodka later on. I ran into Max and Andrew at the Century Club, and they were trying to cut me down, saying I needed a tan, and that I was only nice to people when it was convenient for me. And I said, "You're right," to both comments. They were hanging out with this really pretty tan blonde girl named Stacy Ferguson, who used to be on that show Kids Incorporated, and has since started a singing group with 2 chicks from my high school, one of whom is Max's ex-girlfriend. They're called Wild Orchid. And small note, Stacy later went on to become Fergie of the Black Eyed Peas. She was really pretty back then, and she still is. Anyway, I got really drunk after that because random guys were buying me drink after drink. I was even being rude and snotty because, truthfully, I didn't want any more drinks. I was hoping they would just stop. I was even leaving full drinks at the bar. But needless to say, I got more and more wasted. I went home with Andrew. We got into a huge fight at his house. He was being a jerk because I wouldn't sleep with him, and I got so fed up. I did the craziest thing. I said, "All right, let's just do it then. Is that what this is all about? Come on, let's go." It was absolutely horrible. I was really mean afterward, making fun of him. He threw me out of his house in the rain, and I had to take a cab back to my apartment across town at 5 a.m. in a tiny Angora sweater and a little pleated skirt. And the cab got a flat tire just before my exit on the freeway, and I screamed at the guy to shut the meter off. Anyway, I'm down and I'm lonely, and this weather makes it worse. So now I'm sitting in my apartment with a poinsettia plant next to me. I'm so sick of playing this whole coquettish thing. I'm even more annoyed at how important this sex thing seems to be. What in the hell is the big deal with it anyway? The Hollywood crowd never, ever made a big deal of someone wanting to do it. Ever. Like I said before, I think I was more friends with that crowd. This crowd makes it very clear. You are not a friend. You're a conquest to be had. Well, I screwed up my whole plan regardless. Later, I listened to some Christmas carols in the shower. I even slept out by the Christmas tree so I could smell it. I used to want to do that as a kid. I used to want to leave the twinkly lights on all night. It would bother me that my mother would turn them off when we went to bed. I wanted to know that they were always on, even when I was in my room alone. I especially loved it when it was overcast or actually raining, but that was rare. It was usually sunny on Christmas Day. Bertie invited me to go to Vegas with her that New Year's Eve. I told her I couldn't afford it, and she insisted she had the whole thing covered. I agreed to go, though I had not one penny in my pocket. She came over and gave me some peach lotion from Bath & Body Works as a little present. It smelled like bananas, and we peeled out like we were running from cops. She smoked pot the entire way there from a purple bong I got from some guy at work. We arrived in crowded Las Vegas and walked around the streets with all the crowds of people getting drunk. When it was time to figure out where we were going to sleep, Bertie revealed that not only did she not have a room set up for us, but she had no money either. She told me she was counting on someone buying the heroin she brought, and the sale did not happen as planned. Oh, okay. You were trying to sell some heroin, I see. Well, I totally understand then. Except not. What the fuck? She didn't even tell me she had drugs on her until we were already there. But this was Bertie. She was probably crazier than anyone I had ever known. I had been uncomfortable with the smoking of pot on the way there. But I thought it wasn't bad. Not that bad. But this was scary. Neither of us had money for a room. We didn't even know anyone else out there to try to room with. I was livid. I should have known. I knew I would have to stay really alert when I was with Bertie, because we would end up dead if somebody wasn't watching. She approached some random young guys to mooch pot off of them. She whispered to me that we could easily room with them, but I refused. She was a pro at scamming the younger guys who were so fixated on her beauty that they would empty their pockets immediately to keep her in their presence for just a little while longer. The older ones had her number and required something more of a give and take, but the younger ones were easy prey for her. And needless to say, I didn't want to sleep in a room with some strangers. I didn't want to be in this sort of trouble again. I started to realize I would have to stop hanging around her. It was too dangerous. I decided I would have to keep my distance from her when we got home. She didn't seem all that concerned with finding a place to sleep. She drove us to a crappy unknown casino to use the bathroom. When she came out, she got into the driver's seat of her car and promptly passed out. I looked over at her, and she had this thick film in her mouth, and she was in a deep, creamy sleep. Her makeup was crusted but still beautifully applied. She was still wearing her black and white leopard print fur jacket. I sat there staring at her lifeless body. Then she started snoring like a Great Dane who had just consumed an 18-pack of Budweiser. It dawned on me that she had probably just shot up heroin because she was out and I couldn't wake her. I didn't know what to do. I was going over speeches in my head, thinking of how I would yell at her the next day. She was in such a coma that we slept right there in that car in that parking lot. And in the morning, people were peering in the car windows to see if we were dead. Not the first time this had happened, of course, when I was with her. I was pissed. She went into the casino like it was no problem at all, whipped out a toothbrush, and brushed her teeth in the ladies' room. She fixed her hair, and she was ready to go on with the day. I was so mad at her. So the beginning of 1996 was not the best. Waking up in a car was not what I had in mind for the new year. And to top it off, I ruined my social standing in exactly one night. I flushed all of my hard work down the toilet by straying off my plan of abstinence and sleeping with Andrew. Demeaning and belittling him afterward was the nail in my glittered coffin. He did just as I thought he would. Everywhere I went, I saw him walking up to guys, leaning in toward them with his eyes locked on me, whispering to them, while Craig Mack's Flava in Your Ear or Montel Jordan's This Is How We Do It thumped through the club in the background. Whomever he was talking to would look up at me, lock their eyes on me, nodding and smiling. Oh, I didn't take that shit lying down. I went up to girls and did the same thing back to him. But I would add in showing an inch with my fingers and pointing at him. Girls would look over at him, but then they would quickly ask me how I did my makeup and hair. I pretended they were talking about him because I knew he was watching. I threw my head back, laughed, and had a few more cocktails. Once I got home, though, I was miserable. I cried in my bright kiwi green nightie with a big bow in front, blowing my nose on a sock. I turned my sights back to Missy and Liesel. When things were tough, I knew I could go over there to vent, and I would feel better. They took care of me. They were very sisterly. I knew they had my back. They wouldn't just wake up one day and suddenly hate me like Charlie would. They still lived only a few buildings down from me, so I started going over there in the evenings to see what was going on in their world. I loved walking into their well-shaded courtyard full of lounging cats and potted plants. I could often hear music playing and smell grilled food wafting from somebody's barbecue. Liesel moved in another of the dancers from work named Taylor. She had a young girl's face and really long dark hair. She sort of reminded me of a young Valerie Bertinelli. She wore long floral skirts, bulky sweaters, and very little makeup. Although Taylor looked like a Sunday school teacher, she did not act like one. She tried to slide her hand up my thigh one night while I was over there. I expected it from a certain type of girl, but not her. I was stunned. I couldn't move. I felt frozen like I used to as a young girl, when a way older guy was hitting on me and I was scared. I'm not sure why I reacted like that. I guess I just didn't want to insult her or make a huge scene. I kind of just pretended it wasn't happening. Her hand got closer and closer to my crotch while we were talking about regular stuff. I felt so awkward. I finally got up and said I had to get going and acted like nothing had even happened. I sat in Liesel's apartment one evening that winter while she did her toes. Missy cracked open a Diet Dr. Pepper, flipping her long blonde hair off her pretty doll face while they updated me on the issues at their job. I can't say their issues were anything close to the issues most people have at their jobs. It wasn't like, oh, we have a new boss who sucks, or there have been layoffs. I shit you not, one of their coworkers, a Russian girl, went missing, and a dead body was found near the club. Then the police identified the body as belonging to the girl missing, a Russian dancer. Liesel was having drinks with her the night before she died. They had traded some outfits. Liesel said there was always trading of outfits because when you were dancing, your outfit felt played out when you wore it too much. The Russian girl traded a neon pink velvet dress for something of Liesel's. They drank, they laughed, and that was the last night of that girl's life. One of the guys from Pow Pow was dating a waitress from Missy and Liesel's work. He told me there was a weird DJ who worked there who had a hit list of the people he hated. The dead girl was on his list. This was one of those things I couldn't comprehend because it was so freaky. I just kept saying, no, this must be some kind of a mistake. They have to be wrong about this. I brought up the DJ to Missy and Liesel, and they didn't seem to be worried about him. They insisted he was harmless and an idiot. Liesel said, I'm on his list, fuck him. And I immediately felt dizzy with worry, even though she was tough and appeared to have the whole thing handled. I watched as she dangled her long, tanned legs over the side of the bed, waiting for the polish to dry. She combed her pale blonde hair with her fingers, pulling it up into a big bun on top of her head, dismissing the subject as if it were mere drivel. Liesel later told me that she had done a side modeling job for the DJ to make some extra cash, and his theme was a little strange. Tied up, helpless women. She also did a modeling shoot with a man who was later convicted of strangling and killing model Linda Sobeck and several other women. She met him at some car shop for a modeling job. He was a lonely weirdo who was a car and hot girls photographer. She drove to an empty lake bed to do a shoot for him, and he took pictures of her at her house another time, and when he was there he tried to touch her, and she went off on him and made him leave. Later, she saw him on the news, and she nearly shit her pants. He had taken Linda Sobek to some place in the desert to do some car hot girl shots with her. He had killed her and dumped her body in the Angeles Crest Forest. When Liesl did a shoot, she always made sure the photographer was very clearly informed that she had told people where she was and who she was with. She was a badass. There was no way those mouth-breathing serial killers were going to fuck with her, and it was pretty clear she would not go down without a fight. They surely sensed her street smarts and went to hack other poor women to pieces, sparing her. She saw all of these modeling shoots as extra money on which to survive. She was in some of the big-name men's magazines. She did not realize how dangerous it could be. Aside from all of that, some other weirdness was going down. Missy was suddenly being harassed by an undercover cop with a porn mustache and a thick 1970s set of glasses. Imagine the scariest, creepiest-looking guy you can dream up, and that is what he looked like. The guy had come into their work and busted a few of the extra sleazy girls for lewd conduct and prostitution. They thought that was the end of him. But no, he was a weirdo and started getting super involved in the lives of girls. Missy and I found him snooping around her courtyard one day. She feared he was just a dirty cop and would somehow hurt her. Her instincts were right because she started getting weird phone calls and feared somebody was breaking into her house. I was really scared for her. I was terrified she would end up in a ditch somewhere. I thought maybe he was the person who killed their coworker. I felt uneasy. There was always some kind of evil shit going down on my street. There were so many girls without their families. So many girls who were secretive about their lives. They were like fluffy bunnies sitting out in the field while ugly, drooling, evil wolves came in for the kill. And back at my house, things were just as sad and secretive. Poppy started running her own personal escort service out of the coat closet in my living room in between sips of cheap wine. And as I watched her on the phone wheeling and dealing, I told myself she had to go.